On a crisp autumn morning in 2015, a man named Ethan Hayes walked out of the thick woods bordering his small town. This in itself wasn't unusual. What was strange was that Ethan Hayes had vanished without a trace 10 years earlier, in the autumn of 2005. He was declared legally dead 5 years ago, yet here he was, standing at the edge of the forest, looking not a day older than he did on the day he disappeared. He wore the same clothes, a simple t-shirt and jeans, which were remarkably clean. He didn't seem starved or weathered by the elements. It was as if he had just stepped out for a short walk and somehow lost his way for a few moments, not a full decade. The discovery sent a shockwave through the community, a ghost from the past walking back into the present. When the local sheriff, a man who had been a rookie on the original search party, approached him, Ethan seemed utterly bewildered. He didn't recognize the sheriff, who was now older, with graying hair and a weary face. Ethan's own face was a mask of confusion, his eyes wide with a sort of innocent panic. He asked what year it was, and when told 2015, he simply shook his head in disbelief. To him, it was still October 2005. He had no memory of the intervening years. All he could recall was walking into the woods behind his house, drawn by a sound. He described it as a beautiful ethereal music, unlike anything he had ever heard before. It seemed to be calling to him, pulling him deeper into the trees. His family was contacted, and the reunion was a scene of both joy and profound strangeness. His parents had aged a decade, their faces etched with the grief and worry of losing a son. His younger sister was now a grown woman with a child of her own. To Ethan, these were strangers wearing familiar faces, aged unnaturally in what felt like an instant. He couldn't comprehend the passage of time. The world he had left behind had moved on. His childhood home had been sold, his friends had married, moved away, and started careers. He was a man out of time, a living relic from a forgotten past, and his only explanation for his 10-year absence was a melody he couldn't quite remember, a tune that had led him away from everything he knew. The story of Ethan Hayes became a local legend, a chilling tale whispered in hushed tones. Doctors examined him and found him to be in perfect health, with no signs of physical or mental trauma, other than his complete amnesia of the lost decade. Psychologists were baffled. There was no rational explanation. How could a man disappear for 10 years and return completely unchanged, with no memory of where he had been or what had happened? The only clue he could offer was the haunting, persistent memory of music. "I just followed the music," he would say over and over again. It was a simple phrase that held within it a mystery as deep and as dark as the forest he had walked out of. Ethan's case, while sounding like something straight out of a science fiction novel, is not as unique as you might think. Throughout history, there are documented accounts of people who have vanished under bizarre circumstances, only to reappear later with stories that defy logical explanation. These aren't just simple missing persons cases that end with a tragic discovery or a happy reunion. These are cases that leave a permanent question mark hanging in the air. They are the stories that make the hair on your arms stand up, because they hint at possibilities that our modern scientific minds are not equipped to handle. They suggest that the world we perceive is not the only one that exists. Consider the phenomenon of time slips. These are anecdotal reports of individuals or groups of people who momentarily seem to travel through time. One famous case is the ghosts of Versailles, where 2 English women in 1901 claimed they had stumbled into a garden party from the 1780s, complete with aristocrats in period clothing. They described the scenery in vivid detail, details they couldn't have possibly known. When they returned to the same spot later, the scene was gone, replaced by the modern landscape. Skeptics dismiss these as hallucinations or fabricated stories, but the consistency and sincerity of the accounts are compelling. What if these people aren't just imagining things? What if they are genuinely, for a brief moment, stepping into the past or future? These stories force us to confront the limits of our own understanding. We live in a world governed by the steady, linear progression of time. A minute is a minute, a year is a year. But what if that's just our perception? What if time isn't a straight line, but a winding river with eddies and currents that can sometimes pull people off course. For someone like Ethan Hayes, perhaps he wasn't lost in space, but lost in time. Perhaps he stepped into one of these temporal currents, and for him only a few hours passed while a decade rushed by for the rest of the world. It's a mind-bending concept, but one that offers a potential, albeit extraordinary, explanation for an otherwise impossible event. The implications are profoundly unsettling. If time can be bent or broken, then our reality is far more fragile than we believe. The past might not be as gone as we think, and the future might not be as distant. The world becomes a much stranger, more unpredictable place. The stories of people who return from these lost periods are like messages from another reality, warnings that the rules we take for granted can sometimes be suspended without notice. They are ghosts in the system, anomalies that challenge our fundamental assumptions about existence, leaving us to wonder what other secrets the universe is hiding just beyond our sight. When you start digging into strange disappearances, you inevitably come across the work of David Paulides and his Missing 411 series. Paulides, a former police detective, has spent years compiling a database of baffling missing persons cases from national parks and wilderness areas across North America. These aren't your typical cases of hikers getting lost or succumbing to the elements. These are cases with a distinct and disturbing set of commonalities. The disappearances often happen in a flash, sometimes in areas that have already been thoroughly searched. The victims are frequently found miles away from their last known location, in terrain they couldn't have possibly crossed on their own. One of the most chilling aspects of the Missing 411 cases is the profile of the victims. A significant number are children, the elderly, or people with disabilities. In many instances, tracking dogs are unable to pick up a scent, or they behave erratically, refusing to follow a trail. The weather often takes a sudden, dramatic turn for the worse right after the person goes missing, hampering search efforts. When the victims are found, they are sometimes missing their shoes and clothing, even in freezing conditions. This detail is particularly bizarre and defies any logical explanation. It's a recurring theme that points to something deeply strange at play in these remote, wild places. Paulides doesn't offer a single theory to explain these cases. He simply presents the data and lets the facts speak for themselves. The patterns are undeniable and deeply unsettling. Are these people being abducted? Are they stumbling into some kind of natural but unknown phenomenon? The clusters of disappearances in specific national parks, like Yosemite, suggest that certain locations might be hotspots for this activity. It's as if there are pockets of the world where the veil between our reality and something else is thin, where people can simply be plucked out of existence without a sound and without a trace. These cases resonate with Ethan Hayes' story because they share that element of high strangeness. The suddenness of the disappearance, the lack of evidence, and the sheer impossibility of the circumstances all point to something beyond our current comprehension. The people in the Missing 411 cases who are found alive often have no memory of what happened, similar to Ethan's amnesia. They describe a sense of lost time, of being disoriented and confused. It's a chilling reminder that there are still vast, unexplored mysteries on our own planet, and that sometimes going for a walk in the woods can lead you to a place you were never meant to find. Long before we had theories about time slips or alternate dimensions, our ancestors had their own explanations for people who vanished into the wilderness and returned changed, or not at all. These were the stories of the Fae, the Fae Folk, the good neighbors. In folklore from all around the world, there are tales of mortals being lured into a magical realm that exists parallel to our own. This other world is often described as a place of breathtaking beauty and eternal youth, but also one of great danger for any human who dares to enter. The entrance to this realm is often hidden in plain sight, a ring of mushrooms, an ancient burial mound, or a clearing deep within a forest. A common theme in these stories is the distortion of time. A person might spend what feels like a single night dancing and feasting in the Fae realm, only to return to our world and find that 100 years have passed. Their family and friends are long gone, and the world they knew is unrecognizable. In other tales, a person might return after a week, looking not a day older, while their loved ones have aged and mourned them as lost. This concept of a separate reality with a different flow of time is a perfect match for the story of Ethan Hayes. Was the music he heard a Fae melody, designed to lure him away from his path and into their hidden kingdom? The Fae were not always benevolent beings. They were known to be capricious, mischievous, and sometimes outright malevolent. They would steal children from their cradles, leaving behind a changeling, a sickly Fae creature in their place. They would lead travelers astray with enchanting lights or sounds, causing them to become hopelessly lost. The food and drink of the Fae realm were said to be enchanted. To consume them meant you could never return to the mortal world. These stories served as warnings, cautionary tales to respect the wild places and to be wary of things that seemed too beautiful or too strange to be true. These ancient myths and legends could be seen as the earliest attempts to explain the unexplainable. Before we had the language of physics and psychology, we had the language of folklore. The stories of the Fae provided a framework for understanding events like sudden disappearances, lost time, and strange returns. They gave a name and a face to the mystery. While we may dismiss them as superstition today, it's fascinating to see how these old tales mirror the modern mysteries we still can't solve. Perhaps our ancestors weren't just telling stories. Perhaps they were describing a phenomenon they genuinely experienced, using the only words they had. While tales of Fae realms and time slips are captivating, we have to ask, is there a more grounded scientific explanation for experiences of lost time? Modern neuroscience and psychology offer some intriguing possibilities, though they may not fully account for the high strangeness of cases like Ethan's. One area of exploration is dissociative amnesia, a condition where a person experiences memory loss due to a traumatic event. The mind, in an effort to protect itself from overwhelming stress, essentially blocks out a period of time. It's a powerful and well-documented psychological defense mechanism that can lead to fugue states, where a person might wander away from their life for days, weeks, or even years with no memory of what happened. However, dissociative amnesia doesn't quite fit the puzzle of Ethan Hayes. Typically, a person in a fugue state still ages. They still need to eat, sleep, and find shelter. Their clothes would show signs of wear and tear. Ethan returned in pristine condition, physically unchanged after a decade. This detail pushes the boundaries of a purely psychological explanation. Furthermore, there was no known trauma in Ethan's life that would have triggered such an extreme dissociative episode. He was, by all accounts, a happy and well-adjusted young man on the day he vanished. The trigger wasn't trauma, it was, according to him, music. Another avenue of scientific inquiry involves our perception of time itself. Neurologists have shown that our internal clock is not as reliable as we think. Certain medical conditions, like temporal lobe epilepsy, can cause profound distortions in time perception. Patients have reported feeling as if time is speeding up, slowing down, or even stopping altogether. Could some of the people who go missing be experiencing a severe, undiagnosed neurological event? Perhaps a rare type of seizure could induce a state of altered consciousness and amnesia, causing them to wander off and lose track of hours or days. This could explain some short-term disappearances, but a decade-long gap remains a significant challenge. Ultimately, science struggles to provide a complete answer. The case of Ethan Hayes and others like it seems to sit at the intersection of psychology, neurology, and perhaps even physics. What if there are environmental factors we don't yet understand? Could certain geomagnetic fields or atmospheric conditions temporarily affect the human brain and its perception of time? It's a speculative leap, but science is constantly pushing the boundaries of what we know. While a psychological or neurological cause is more probable than a trip to a Fae realm, the current models fall short of explaining all the bizarre details, leaving the door open for more extraordinary possibilities. Let's venture further into the speculative, into the realm of theoretical physics. Here, the ideas of other dimensions and parallel universes are not just the stuff of fiction, They are serious concepts being explored by some of the brightest minds on the planet. String theory, for example, posits that there may be up to 11 dimensions of space-time, most of which are curled up and hidden from our perception. What if, under very specific and rare conditions, a doorway to one of these other dimensions could open? What if someone could accidentally step through it? This is the stuff of Hollywood blockbusters, but it's rooted in real scientific theory. Imagine a world that coexists with our own, separated by a thin dimensional membrane. In this other world, the laws of physics, including the flow of time, could be completely different. A person who stumbles into such a place might experience time at a much slower rate. 10 years could pass in our world, while only a few hours or days pass for them. This would perfectly explain why someone like Ethan Hayes could return without having aged. He wasn't in our world for that decade. He was somewhere else entirely, a place where time holds a different meaning. The music he heard could have been the sound of this other dimension, a vibrational frequency that momentarily created a rift between worlds. This concept is often called the interdimensional hypothesis, and it's sometimes used as a potential explanation for UFO phenomena as well as strange disappearances. The idea is that these events are not caused by aliens from other planets, but by visitors or phenomena from a parallel reality. It's a theory that is impossible to prove with our current technology, but it's also difficult to disprove. It provides a framework that can accommodate all the strange elements of these cases: the suddenness of the disappearance, the lack of evidence, the lost time, and the return of individuals who are physically unchanged. Of course, this is all deep speculation. We have no concrete evidence that such interdimensional portals exist. But when faced with a mystery that defies all conventional explanations, we are forced to consider unconventional ideas. The story of a man who returns after 10 years, having only followed some music, pushes us to the very edge of our understanding. It makes us question the nature of reality itself. Is the world we see all there is? Or are we living alongside other unseen realities, separated by a veil so thin that sometimes, just sometimes, someone can slip through? There's a profound and deeply unsettling aspect to these stories that goes beyond the initial mystery of the disappearance. It's the return. We often focus on the joy and relief of a loved one being found, but what happens after the initial reunion? What is it like to live with someone who has been gone for a decade and has no memory of it? The person who returns is a paradox. They are the same, yet completely different. They are a living, breathing reminder of a gap in time, a wound that can never fully heal because its cause is unknown. The family has mourned and moved on, only to have their world upended once again. Imagine being Ethan's parents. You grieved the loss of your son. You went through the painful process of accepting his death, of packing away his belongings, of trying to build a new life around the gaping hole he left behind. Then one day he walks back into your life exactly as he was. The joy would be immense, but it would be followed by a wave of complex and difficult emotions. How do you reconnect with a son who doesn't remember the decade of your pain? How do you explain to him that his world is gone, that the life he expected to return to no longer exists? He is a ghost from the past, and his return makes ghosts of the lives you've lived without him. The psychological impact on the person who returns is equally devastating. For Ethan, the world has leapt forward by 10 years in the blink of an eye. Technology has changed. His friends and family are older. He is an outsider in his own life, a stranger in a familiar land. He has to grieve the loss of a decade he never got to live. He has to contend with the constant questions, the doctors, the scientists, and the whispers of the townspeople. He is an anomaly, a curiosity, and the weight of that identity would be crushing. The music he followed led him to a place of profound and unending isolation. This is the truly eerie part of the story. It's the idea of returning when you weren't supposed to. In the narrative of life, some people are written out of the story. Their chapter ends. But what happens when a character who was supposed to be gone suddenly reappears in the final act? It disrupts the entire narrative. It feels fundamentally wrong, like a glitch in the fabric of reality. The return is not a resolution. It is the beginning of a new and perhaps more terrifying mystery. It raises the chilling question, if some people can come back, where have they been? And what might have come back with them? The return of a person lost to time creates a ripple effect that destabilizes the entire family unit. Relationships that have been redefined by loss are suddenly thrown into chaos. Consider Ethan's younger sister. She grew up with the shadow of her missing brother hanging over her. She went from being a teenager to a wife and a mother. Her identity was shaped by his absence. Now her older brother is back, but he's still the same age he was when he left, while she is a decade older. The natural order of their sibling relationship has been inverted. She is now the one with more life experience, the one who has to guide him through a world he no longer recognizes. This creates a strange and uncomfortable dynamic. The family must constantly navigate a minefield of memories and lost time. Every conversation is a reminder of the gap. Stories about the past 10 years, weddings, births, holidays, are things Ethan cannot share. He is an observer of a life that should have been his. The family, in turn, might feel a sense of guilt for having moved on, for having found happiness in a world without him. They might also feel a subconscious resentment. His return, as welcome as it is, forces them to relive the trauma of his disappearance all over again. He is a constant, living symbol of their greatest loss and their most baffling miracle. Furthermore, the person who returns might not be exactly the same. Even if they haven't aged physically, their experience, whatever it was, may have changed them in subtle ways. Are there gaps in their personality as well as their memory? Do they seem distant, detached, as if a part of them is still somewhere else? The family might find themselves constantly searching for signs of the person they once knew, while being confronted by this new, enigmatic version. The trust that forms the bedrock of a family is shaken. How can you fully trust someone when you don't know where they've been for 10 years? This is the quiet horror of the aftermath. The news crews eventually leave, and the scientific interest fades, but the family is left to piece together a new reality. They have to learn to live with the anomaly in their midst. The returned person is both a blessing and a curse, a source of joy and a source of deep, unsettling mystery. They are a living paradox, a testament to the fact that sometimes, even when you get back what you lost, it is never truly the same. The empty space they left behind has been filled, but the shape of the family has been permanently and irrevocably altered. Why do stories like that of Ethan Hayes, the missing 411 cases and ancient Fae legends captivate us so profoundly? It's because they speak to a fundamental part of the human experience, our relationship with the unknown. We spend our lives trying to create order out of chaos. We build routines, follow schedules, and rely on the predictable laws of science. We like to believe that we have a firm grasp on reality, but these stories punch a hole in that comfortable certainty. They remind us that the map we have of the world is incomplete, and that there are still vast, uncharted territories just beyond the borders of our knowledge. This fascination is a double-edged sword. On one hand, it's thrilling. It's the spirit of exploration, the same drive that sent us across oceans and into outer space. We are a curious species, and we are drawn to puzzles that have no easy answers. A good mystery ignites our imagination and encourages us to think beyond the ordinary, to consider possibilities that stretch the limits of what we believe to be true. These stories are invitations to wonder, to speculate, and to dream. They keep the world from becoming too mundane, too predictable. They add a touch of magic and danger to an otherwise rational world. On the other hand, this fascination is rooted in fear. These mysteries are unsettling because they represent a loss of control. If a person can simply vanish into thin air, if time can become distorted, if there are places in the world where the rules don't apply, then we are not as safe as we think we are. The universe is not the orderly, predictable machine we want it to be. It is wild, chaotic, and indifferent to our existence. The man who returns unchanged after a decade is a terrifying figure because he is proof of our own vulnerability. He represents the possibility that at any moment our reality could fracture. Ultimately, these stories hold a mirror up to our own existence. They force us to confront the biggest mysteries of all. What is time? What is reality? What happens after we die? We may never find the answers to the disappearances in the national parks, or know where Ethan Hayes really went, but the search for those answers is what matters. It keeps us questioning, exploring, and looking for the truth, no matter how strange or unsettling it may be. The unknown is a vast and endless frontier, and as long as there are stories that defy explanation, we will continue to venture into the darkness, searching for a flicker of light. Keep exploring, and don't forget to follow for more expeditions into the unknown.